What's up, Clifton?
I'm sorry, man. What's up, Adam? How are you?
I know we were waiting a little bit for this Chipotle.
No, it's so delicious that I feel so distracted. I can't really focus on. I don't know what it is. I feel like I should feel some kind of shame for enjoying Chipotle as much as I do. I don't know why.
This is a no shame zone.
Good.
Up to a point.
Okay.
Then we start shaming niggas.
All right. Well, you got me eating on camera, though.
So for people who may not be familiar with yourself, you mind introducing yourself?
As soon as I finish eating my delicious Chipotle, should I look at a camera? Where am I looking at?
You can look at me.
And look at you.
Cameras don't exist.
Oh, okay. Oh, they don't exist.
Yeah.
Well, Adam, what's interesting about me, I guess, I'm a military brat. I was a shy, stupid little boy who grew up to become an actor in New York City. Went to a fancy school, traveled around the country, did all kinds of theater, was doing TV and film, and then 2020 happened. And I became famous essentially for not being allowed to become famous. So now, I write, I tweet, I have a podcast, and I've been enlisted kind of to create a show, a one-man play. But, for all intents and purposes, I call myself an accidental influencer. And so that's sort of my story in a nutshell, if there is one, a shell or a story.
Well, the accidental influencers are the best influencers. The ones who want to be influencers, they're weird.
It's funny you should mention that.
Yes.
We were just talking about this thing. Well, our mutual friend, Salome Siboney, we were talking about this very thing. We're both kind of sick of it. And especially since October 7th, I think I've noticed a lot of people. I mean, of course, the crazier society gets, the crazier, the reactions become, I suppose.
Right.
And but the whole influencer game to me is just it's so repulsive because I see the same things that I witnessed in entertainment, which is a bunch of crazy people who are dying to be famous. And once you take a step back and you realize what's going on, like, I mentioned that we didn't see each other, but we were at Winston's Dissident Dialogues event in New York. And it was a fun place to be in terms of, meeting like-minded people, and also everyone is really tall. I don't know if you...
Everyone's taller than you.
Everyone is much taller. Usually it's the opposite, but all of your favorite tweeters are tall as shit. But just one of those atmospheres, man, where people are just... Not that I was guilty of this myself, but, people aren't really there with you. They're not really there in conversation. They're taking selfies. They're looking around the room, scanning the room to see who's important. They're trying to gauge, how important it is, how important you are, and therefore how well you should be treated, how much attention you should be paid. And, it's just a bunch of people who, it's not just a bunch, I can't make broad sweeping statements, but, the same kind of egos and the same sorts of status games. And, at least in Hollywood or entertainment at large, you expect there to be some level of narcissism. But ironically, I was talking to Dr. Drew about this, which is really funny. He said, the level of narcissism that we see in influencers, this was his theory, but it's probably akin to what we would see in reality TV stars. Where ironically, if you're an actor or if you're a singer or something, yeah, of course, there is a degree of narcissism there. But it's a narcissism that is in service both of the self and of, like you're you're sacrificing hours and months and years of your life to learn a craft, which is very difficult. I mean, I used to live with 2 Alvin Ailey dancers, and they were always walking around in various stages of pain, muscular pain and injury. But then you'd see them, on stage at Lincoln Center or something, and they just bring you to tears because they're so graceful and explosive and just beautiful. But that very morning, it was like, I watched you get your period this morning. and you were not a happy camper.
Right.
So there is, at least there's some talent there. Like that's the exchange, I think, is that there's a talent there that is valuable to humanity in some way, as opposed to, well, I say inflammatory things on a podcast.
Right.
I mean, I've been railing against, there's too many fucking podcasts now. And I say this, knowing full well that I'm on a podcast and that I have a podcast of my own.
Yes.
But, I go back to this idea of being an accidental influencer. It's just an empty thing, and there's already so many talking heads already. Do we really need one more?
Mm-hmm.
Especially at a time where people talk about culture war this and culture war that, but they'll hire they'll hire a director of photography for their podcast, but will they shoot a feature or put that money into building new museums or theaters or conservatories or whatever?
Yeah.
Supporting musicians. But I mean, I could rant about this for a long time. But there's Chipotle in front of me, and I have to enjoy it.
Enjoy Chipotle. No, I agree with you. I think that I'm okay with talented people being a bit quirky, or talented people having a bit of an ego, like athletes. If a guy, man, I can't remember his name right now. What's the name? Sherman.
Richard Sherman?
Richard Sherman. Thank you. It was like on my head. Richard Sherman got a whole bunch of flack because he was saying, yeah, I'm the best cornerback in the league, and you're not going to get past me. And I'm like, yeah, I think he has every right to say that, because he really believes that. And he probably is the best cornerback in the league at the time.
Yeah.
And you can't get past him. Like, I think it's perfectly fine for someone who's extremely talented. You're the 1% of the 1% of people, and who's able to do this very thing at a high level. Yeah, I think you have every right to say you're good as shit, and this person is not as good as you. And in much of the same way, like, same thing with actors. I don't necessarily have a problem with a really good actor having a bit of an ego. It's something that is earned. I understand, maybe most people don't, but I at least understand how hard it is to be an actor, just from the sense of looking at how many bad actors there are. Like, because the bad actors spend a lot of time, and they're still bad, trying to be as good.
It's not a barrier to employment these days. Not that it ever has been, but it certainly isn't now.
Yeah. But, just understanding, like, man, good actors are hard to come by because it's hard. It's hard to fake your emotions and sell it to other people. To say things that you're not actually saying, but it's somebody else's words in a convincing way.
To do it as if it's the first time, as if you haven't rehearsed it a million times.
Right.
All the greats make it look easy.
Mm-hmm.
And, people like Alec Guinness, Rob De Niro, they talk about, Brando said the same thing. They say action. They say action, and you feel the pressure to have to do something, and really you don't want to do anything. You want to allow something to happen. You want to be so steeped into the character that you're not forcing anything to happen, but it takes hours and hours and hours of work to get to a place where you're free enough
right.
to let things emerge from you in a way. So, but even then, the point is you're you're dedicating and investing time and energy into learning a craft of some sort, as opposed to, I'm going to pull a bunch of hot takes and, I'm going to say the most outrageous thing so that I can be polarizing and, find my tribe or whatever. I don't know,
Yeah.
And, again, I'm guilty of the same thing, but it's a real internal struggle.
I think the only difference for you is that that's not all you are.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that. I don't know these days. No, man, I'm serious. I don't know. I'll let you finish your thought because I also want to eat.
No, I mean, you're not, it's very clear that you're a talented individual and you're choosing to say what you want to say, but you're not relying off of that as anything. And I don't think most people even think that you're saying it because you're like, yeah, I got more followers because of that. That's how you feel. And if you want to be irreverent right now, then you're irreverent. That's how you feel. It's not a ploy to get something after the fact. At least that's my interpretation of how you tweet. Sometimes, yeah, you have a hot take, but sometimes you just have a hot take because you just think it's funny, or that's just how you're feeling.
Most of the stuff I tweet because it just makes me laugh.
Mm-hmm.
So much of it is so ridiculous. But I also delete a lot of tweets. And oftentimes when I do that, it's just because I didn't have to say that. Because I also don't want to become the person. Goes back into, why my energy has been so dark or so heavy. And it's sort of what Salome and I were talking about is that, and you and I were talking about, is that I really resent now because I was so critical of pandemic policy and I was and am and will continue to be a critic of, the identity Marxism, maybe we'll call it that.
Yeah.
Now I'm lumped in. Well, first of all, that kind of conversation, those kinds of views are shunned by the more popular, I guess, mainstream institutions. So right away, you're forced into the alternative space, so to speak. And I think over time, I just began to resent. Also feeling like, this isn't really my tribe, so this isn't really where I belong. But
Yeah.
These echo chambers now, especially now after 10/7, it's things have gotten so ridiculous, and I find people to be so absurd. And I certainly have my opinions and my views and where I stand on things, but I just come to really disdain the whole I don't even know if I call it influencer culture or subculture or whatever. Because then I realized that, okay, on one side of the aisle, my views on anything from abortion to religion to gay marriage, well, then these people look at me like I'm some sort of, first of all, as an atheist, like, oh, you're a moron and you're not smart and you have no moral compass.
Mm-hmm.
As a pro-choicer, then it's like, oh, well, you're just a murderer. You don't care about the rights of the unborn. I had someone accuse me of supporting pedophilia because, I make the joke that, look, if the gays want to be as miserable in matrimony as their hetero cousins, that should be their right in a free and liberal society. And then there's the art thing, which no one gives a fuck about. Mm-hmm. And then they complain that, they ask questions like, how come no one thinks we're cool? How come we just keep losing? I see these inane fucking tweets from people about, why do conservatives always lose in the culture war? Well, because you don't make any fucking culture. You don't do anything.
Right.
You don't, but on the other side, it's people who, I'm some kind of coon or a sellout or a house nigger or whatever because I'm so stridently against their shitty religion, pseudo-religion. And I don't find a home among these people. As a matter of fact, one of the things that's been eating me up is, I talk to people on the inside in entertainment still. And, on that recent trip to New York, I had a lot of people who were saying, they're very encouraging and saying, you should really, you should come on back. And, I hear terms like post-woke being passed around. I hear that, I spoke to a major casting director who's known me for a long time, and they told me, we were on an hour-long Zoom call, and they said, look, the conversations around casting are different now, and someone like yourself, i.e. me, would be cast for the right reasons. They were acknowledging that people over the past few years have been hired for the wrong reasons, i.e. checking the right boxes.
Right.
I believe she phrased it as some people, she's very diplomatic about it, but there are some people who were given roles that they weren't quite ready for. But at the same time, I'm urged to not be bitter. And of course, it's never good to be bitter. It's never good to have those kinds of things weighing on you. Just pay off the unions and maybe stop talking online so much. Have you ever said anything crazy or da-da-da-da-da? And I'm like, well, why does there need to be some kind of purity test? Why do I feel as though I'm being put through a purity test? Why should it matter that, I've had Heather McDonald on my podcast a couple of times, or that I have a podcast about Gamergate, or that Douglas Murray's been on my podcast? Like, why should that even matter? These are really smart people. Maybe you should listen to them. They have something of value to offer. Someone like Victor Davis Hanson was one of my earliest guests, and it was just a half-hour episode about Greek tragedy and classical Greek literature. And people thought it was so refreshing to see someone like Dr. Hanson, who's normally called on for his political commentary, but he was talking about rhetoric and Antigone and these great Greek plays and works of literature, and why a classic is important, what makes a piece of literature or art a classic in the first place. And people really enjoyed that discourse. So on one hand, you have people who just for purely ideological reasons would look at somebody like me and say, I don't feel safe around these people. Like, I don't feel professionally safe. Even though people are saying, I'm told, well, sure, your opinions and your public stances might cost you some work, but for every one producer who's like that, there's probably 10 more that would hire you. And I'm just not sure. So I guess all I'm saying is I feel truly homeless in a big way, because on one hand, it's like, I got people who, one thing I never wanted to be was to become some sort of tool or mouthpiece. I don't like it when, for example, if I'm handed a script, I just saw one today, as a matter of fact, the same casting office, bless them. They sent me this appointment, this audition, which was great, but you open the script, and I don't want to give away too many details, but it's set at a time and in a place that was crippled by communism. We'll put it that way. This fact is talked around in the script, and I'm like, they can't ever just say it directly. It's the U.S. blockade on this particular country, not anything around the blockade or the country, or who was governing at the time. It's the United States. So it's that sort of, that, what Soul would call a vision, that just, there's all these implicit assumptions about the way the world is and why things happen the way that they do. And to me, it would be exciting if I felt like I could wear this shirt into, any rehearsal hall, which I did one day on accident, which is funny. And not have it be a big deal. Or like there's an actor who's a very prominent actor in New York who told me that he liked a tweet from J.K. Rowling. And within 5 minutes, he got a text message telling him to unlike that tweet. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of environment in show business where you have these weird, like you just don't know. You have an industry that attracts a lot of, as we were saying, like narcissists, a lot of broken people. That's why they go into theater or into performing arts. They're the weirdos and the outcasts, and I say that including myself. There's some kind of, because only insane people, you have to understand, go for a career in the arts. There's another reason why conservatives, I think, are not really going to make any huge dent, because conservatives have a huge normalcy bias. They're the people that are like, get a job and be stable and take care of your finances and go to church. And you need those people for your, to keep your society from falling apart. Right. For all the liberals break everything. They're like, the paternal force. It's like, hey, don't do that, or you put your eye out. But that's not really where the artists, the artists want to push boundaries. They want to challenge norms, and especially as an actor, you want to have an open mind, an open heart. And it's a very chaotic and unpredictable way to be. It's very difficult to sustain a life, and have that kind of energy. It's like it doesn't really lend itself to holding down a job and to, holding down a family. And so you see all these breakups and everything because you have, these chaotic people together.
Right.
But, so where is that energy? I just see on one hand, people are like, well, comic books are stupid, and video games are for children, and theater is gay, and all rap is bad, and like anything fun or edgy or kind of daring you want to do, they're over here saying, don't do that. Mm-hmm. But then on the other hand, these people on the other side who are, they're liberal. I mean, they're showing trans titties at the White House, but yet they have their own set of taboos, right, that you can't say, which is also stifling and boring. I was on a trip to New York, and we're in rehearsal one day, and we're doing Titus Andronicus. And the play opens. There's a huge power vacuum in Rome as it's kind of crumbling to pieces, and there are these warring factions basically storming the Capitol, so to speak. And of course, someone had the bright idea to say, "Oh, storming the Capitol, eh? It's just like January 6th." And it wasn't so much that it was phrased in that way. It's just that, well, I actually know people who got hemmed up that day, and there's a whole different experience, a whole different side to that story that they don't care about. Mm-hmm. And then there was another aspect, later on that same day where they were like, I was on Latino TikTok, and all these Latino Trumpers, like, I couldn't believe it. It was so scary. And all this misinformation, and again, it's not that these people might have different views about immigration, about the school system, about taxes, right, regulations, law enforcement. It's automatically that they're getting the wrong information. And it's just this is another reason why I become so black-pilled, because I just see all these people that are so fucking racist, like James Carville talking about, why these black kids, why aren't they coming home? Vote for the Democrats, or now we see these dumb fucking white people who are talking about, white guys for Kamala and white women for Kamala. Like, look at these fucking people. But at the same time, there's this really ugly strain, I think, that's coming from the right, in reaction to the ridiculousness of the identitarianism of the past decade or so, decade
Right.
plus, really. I mean, it's been going on for a long time, where now openly racist, openly just ugly, ugly stuff. And so one of my big fears now is that the coming decade, maybe 5, 10 years, some really, really ugly things are coming. And was randomly British for two. And so, yeah, I feel like I'm very much, I feel so homeless, so to speak, in so many ways. Like, where do I go? People over here, you know, aren't really on the vibe. People over there, I don't feel like they're not crazy enough to like go and find, oh, this man, oh, he had Right Said Fred on his podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It's time to, we better, create some campaign and better take him out.
Right.
So I don't know. I just sort of have given up on a lot of things, I think.
Well, I'm a believer that being politically homeless is the best homeless. And the interesting thing about being politically homeless is that you're not alone. So I think there's a vacuum of people who feel like yourself. I feel like I'm much in the same boat in many things. I also get labeled as conservative. I guess I am on some things, and other things I'm pretty liberal on.
But it doesn't matter though. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you're not pure enough for anyone either way.
And I've accepted that.
Yeah.
I've accepted that, and I'm okay with that. And actually, once I made it known that I'm an independent, it actually made life so much easier, because by choosing a side, you become a weapon. But by taking no side, it's hard to use that against you.
Yeah, but see, then the criticism is, well, you're trying to protect yourself. You're weak. You're not really taking a side or taking a stand.
But I feel like the person who says that is weak, weaker than me. I feel very certain about how I feel. And you feel threatened because I'm certain about how I feel. You just want me on your team. So that means that I actually have more relevancy. Why do you want me on your team so bad if I'm so weak? That's how I see it. So when someone tries to play this game, oh, you're just this, you're just that. Well, why do you care? Why do you care if I'm an independent or if I'm a Republican or Democrat? Why do you actually care? And it's because there are a lot of people who are so weak and fragile that they can't stand to have someone deviate from how they believe. Well, and I've seen so many people on the right claim that this is a left-wing thing solely. And like, no, you guys. Just like how they talk about, oh, the left is snowflakes. I know exactly what to say to piss off the right. So does that make you guys snowflakes too? Of course. Like, we're all a little bit of a snowflake. There are certain things that bother us, right? And if you have a political allegiance and there's a soft spot, someone's going to see it. And I see it. So don't pretend that you guys are the only ones. Like, no, you guys are just as flawed as the left. And matter of fact, I started saying the woke right. They're just as authoritarian in some ways as the woke left. And all they're doing is just replacing, they just don't have purple hair. But in some ways, they are just as, the only thing that's absent from them is power. That's it.
Well, that's the thing. Well, for one, I anticipate that, and perhaps my fear is that the pendulum is going to swing back in a big way.
Yeah.
And right now, you have people who are saying, oh, free speech and free expression and people shouldn't be canceled. But then as soon as they have their own authority,
Yep.
That's when you're going to start saying, oh, the gays, you can't get married anymore. Actually, you know what? Abortion, let's ban it everywhere. They're going to exert their own. That's the thing, man, is people trying to exert their own moral force. So I go back to this idea that these people are weak. I don't think it's that. I think that they think that they are involved in a seriously existential threat. And anyone that they perceive as trying to protect themselves by not taking sides is viewed with just as much derision as the enemy. Maybe even worse, because at least their enemy they can say, well, I know what that person stands for, and they're courageous enough at least to battle it out. But this person, this as Constantine says, this politically non-binary person is just trying to not put any skin in the game, and they're not, they don't want to upset the apple cart too much.
But the not wanting to put skin in the game, I'm fine with that. Like, even the concept of a culture war, that means that, like any other war, like we talk about the United States going into all these different countries, right? It's like, wait, we went in there for one thing. How come we're still there for 20 years later? It's because war is profitable. That's why I've come to the conclusion that the culture war is just about profit, whether it's profiting financially or it's profiting from clout or whatever, but someone's gaining from the division. Otherwise, I don't think it would be happening in the manner that it's happening. And there are people who are perpetuating it. I've talked to people about like the trans stuff over the past year or so. In my entire life, I don't know if I've ever met anybody who would say I'm trans. Over the past year to 2 years, inundated with trans content. And I was talking to someone about this who talks about, like, there's a legitimate concern, like mutilating children. That's a very legitimate concern that we should talk about. That is growing. However, there are people who are part of, whether influencers, whether it's independent media, who search for weirdos in dresses.
Yeah.
Right? And why are they doing that? Like, they're even telling me they go into private communities. They're looking specifically for this weirdo content. It's one thing to be like, oh, it was on TikTok and it went viral and we just talked about it. It's another thing to search specifically for it. And I've also seen where they take old shit and bring it back out. It's like, well, why did they do that?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Twitter right now is really crazy because I just see people, I'm like, dude, people just say fucking anything. They'll post anything.
Right.
And I mean, I'm someone who I rate community notes, and the extent of people's pettiness is just it's unbelievable. But you'll see, someone will post a video and it will be like, Kamala Harris did this, yada, yada, yada. And then the community note will correctly say, this video is 3 years old and it has nothing to do with what the post is saying it's doing.
Right.
And, it just goes back to this point of another reason I just sort of get, not sort of, but I get annoyed because, as you say, I mean, you do learn over time, at least I did, that, being polarizing and hyperbolic, especially on a platform like Twitter, I mean, it's gold. Yeah. And it's gold for engagement, and, it just makes things really easy in terms of, getting likes and shares and these kinds of things. But at the same time, when I see it now and I see, well, I say to myself, I see what you're doing. And I'm so sick of this stuff. And well, there's something else I wanted to say, but I forgot what it was.
Well, if I can point out some good news. The good news is that most people don't use Twitter.
That's the other thing, that's so bizarre because, in a weird way, being Twitter famous is almost like the best kind of fame to have. Because you can legitimately have all these opportunities and if your account gets big enough, you can legitimately just take a couple hours a day and tweet stuff out, and you can make some groceries and weed money, and that's a cool aspect about it. But then at the same time, you're being put in touch with these major media outlets or whatever, or you're in touch with, whatever person with status. And you're just exchanging DMs. But then, you can go to a coffee shop or whatever, or you just be really low key and no one knows who the hell you are. Because, like you said, it's only a fraction of people that are using the damn thing in the first place. But it still drives so much of our, public discourse for some strange reason.
Yeah. I call that niche notable.
Niche notable?
Yeah.
Micro famous, micro celebrity.
Yeah. I think that's the best type of fame. Like you said, in one area, people know you are. Like I was at a Bitcoin thing in Nashville this past weekend. I don't know anything about Bitcoin. Not in that extent. It's like its own world and everything. Yeah. And I was like, someone could be walking past me that is like this huge mega Bitcoin guy, and I have zero idea. Just like they have no idea who the fuck I am either. And I've done some stuff. So like, I think that's the best thing that can exist. I would hate to be famous. I would hate to be like movie star famous.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. There's a reason they're almost never happy. Every once in a while, you'll meet like a Meryl Streep who is just comfortable, being who and what they are. But I mean, for me, it was always great. You do the show and then you hang out at the stage door afterward, and people, they want you to sign their playbill or whatever, and you talk about the show and then disappear into anonymity on the subway on the way home, as opposed to getting to a level where, see, that's the thing, people. I give celebrities a little bit of slack because the average person has no idea the kind of pressure that famous people live under all the time. This public pressure, and people always wanting access to you. People, trying to, get you onto their shows or get you to endorse something, or trying to, they want to reach some kind of brand deal with you. They have some fucking script that they wrote. Everyone wants access to you. Mm-hmm. And so you have to build up barriers, and you have to put walls up around yourself, or else you'll go nuts. I mean, there's that great video of Keanu Reeves, who's just sort of blending in with everyone else, and like he's like a regular guy, but that works for him. I think he's one of those rare people that is so kind of low key and so approachable that he could be the regular guy on the street. And the thing people don't realize, man, I was at a Black Eyed Peas show in Kansas City. I think it was Missouri, not Kansas City, Kansas. And the Black Eyed Peas were doing this show, and and we had seats pretty much up front because Ludacris, I think, had opened for them, and the woman that was Luda's choreographer was also the choreographer for the show that we were working on. So we got like this great hookup to go, It was hilarious. I was walking backstage. I saw Will.i.am. I was like, "Hey, what's up, man?" He was just like, "Hey, what's up?" Because it was so casual and chill. Because I was like, "That's right, Will.i.am, okay." And so we're out there, and the Black Eyed Peas, our whole thing, all these great lights and costumes. It's so crazy. And Fergie comes out, and she's got this, this like silver outfit on, this ensemble, and it's cut down to here. You can see, all the stuff that she wants you to see. And she's like strutting away. And she gets one step and she busts her ass right in front of like everybody. And, she got up and she recovered. And I was just like, I couldn't even laugh. But, she wasn't that far away from me. And I said, oh, they're just people. Mm-hmm. They're just human beings who are surrounded by all these cameras, all these lights, and, the costumes and everything. And the thing is, you go into these industries and you might have a dream, and, you might be motivated by fame. But the irony is that a lot of times, people are quite, especially if they're really great artists, they're quite introverted in a lot of ways. And when you're an artist, you're a very vulnerable person in a way that the average person is not. I mean, the way Rick Rubin describes it is like, everything hurts. You know, when I was in conservatory, and there were days I was so just open, I'd read a headline and I'd just burst into tears. Now, the normal person would say, "You sound fucking insane." And I'd say, "You're right. That's why I'm the actor and you are not. You're in the audience." Um, but that's the kind of what you learn is, you know, I had a teacher who said you have to learn how to channel all of that sensitivity. And that's where the technique and training comes in, where you have that level. There's always something simmering underneath the surface. You're always taking in more information than everyone else is. Um, you know, but you have to have somewhere to put it. And, you know, or some call, you know, somewhere to invest all that stuff. And I forgot where I was going with that train of thought, but where was I headed on that? I forgot completely.
It's all good. I mean, I think your point is taken.
I think maybe what I was getting at is nope, forgot it. It's completely gone. It left.
No, it's okay. Yeah, I think over time I've become. Oh, you got it?
Yes, yeah. There's a level of, that's why you see these people who have all this fame and fortune, and but they hate themselves. So they're on drugs. They're fucking everything that moves. It's a very empty and hedonistic life. But ironically, fame makes that worse.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It amplifies all of these temptations, especially if you're, you know, I forgot who it was. You know, it's like if you're a man who, you know, you just booked a sitcom in LA, you suddenly have the same kind of clout and attractiveness as the fucking Beachbody 10 that just walked into the room. And, you know, you talk about how power corrupts. Well, fame is a form of power.
Right.
And especially in that particular industry, you're always surrounded by people who are saying how special you are, how good looking you are, how talented you are. Because there's too much money riding on it. Everyone has to think that you're great. That's why Dave Chappelle was like, "I gotta get out of here. I can't believe these people. You know, they're nuts." You know, you just don't know who's telling you the truth or not. And if you're someone who doesn't know how to deal with that kind of pressure, you literally go insane. And so it's easy for people on the outside to say, "Look at this crazy celebrity person who's doing this wild stuff," and it's like, you have no idea what kind of life they're living right now.
Right.
It's mad. And honestly, you know, if you got a Pacino or a De Niro or something, I mean, Denzel's a special case just because, I mean, he's truly great, but I think because, ironically, he's quite conservative. He doesn't come out and say it, but I think it's obvious. You just look at the things that he says. But I think he's a master craftsperson because he's able to keep that under control. You know what I mean? And he's able to keep that energy, at least from a public perspective, where it belongs. But what I was saying is, you know, you don't get a Robin Williams with a little bit of crazy. You know, you don't get an Al Pacino with a little bit of screws loose, or a De Niro or something like that. And creatives understand that. But again, if you take something like fame, it could become a really toxic mix very quickly. So again, it goes back to this idea that you see all these quote unquote influencers and content creators who want to be famous. And it's like, you know, you talk, if you take someone who's comfortable in the limelight or is used to it, that's something else versus someone who, you know, is some random person and then they become famous. That could be a dangerous combination as well. So people just don't know how to deal with that level of fame.
No, I think it makes me think about, I couldn't imagine if I live a life and I'm unsure why someone's being nice to me.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, they're being nice to me because I'm Adam, or is it because I'm Adam? You know, and I think that messes with your head because now you don't know who to trust, if this person is trying to get something from you, if they're just, feeding you bullshit so they can get close to you. Does this woman actually love me, or does she love that I make lots of money, or that people know who I am? And it's a status thing. It'd be like, I can only imagine how much that messes with your head when you reach that point, which I guess lends to why so many actors just marry other actors, people who are already in the industry.
They're the only other people who really understand you.
Yeah.
And, it sucks because for women, typically the man that is best for them is going to be a more conservative guy. But what comes along with that is a guy who's probably not going to understand, hey, so you were kissing that other guy in that scene. I don't like you doing that. Or, hey, you keep traveling. You went to do some theater thing, some play, and you disappeared for 8 weeks. What's that about? I mean, I experienced the same thing. I was doing a play in Baltimore. There was some woman I matched with on Tinder, that cesspit. And, we were messaging back and forth, and, it was a period where I was pretty fresh out of grad school / conservatory. And I had the good fortune of working pretty consistently. Like, you kind of want to go from gig to gig to gig. And I was doing this play in Baltimore, and then I booked another play up at Yale. And this woman was like, okay, I don't understand. You're going to be doing what? Where? When? But you're in Maryland right now. So then you're going up. Yes. And then I have another job that starts a week after I get back from Maryland. So, so it's hell on relationships, and, and then most people just don't understand the life of an actor. Really, they see the glitz and the glamour, but the people who are working, especially if you're going up the chain, off Broadway, TV, film, there's all kinds of people who are trying to do what you're doing. But once you get into the circle of like consistently working professionals, it's a very, very, very small club. It's a very incestuous and small circle. But to get into those circles, and people have their theories about, casting couches and selling your soul and drinking baby blood or something. But most careers that I've seen anyway, they take about a decade to take off, particularly if you're a man. I remember when I was 19, I said, well, all the great parts are written for guys that are like 35. What am I going to do? 35 and above. So what am I going to do, in the meantime? But typically what happens is you spend most of your career looking for jobs, like an audition. I try to liken it to if you're trying to get a job at a restaurant and you have to learn a new menu. And if you're someone who's fortunate in auditioning a lot, you might have 2, 3, 4, 5 auditions that week, which means you have, you could have one audition might be, two short scenes. Another one might be, 3 long scenes. It's like having to learn a new menu and then present that menu, as if it's the first time for a new set of people every single time. And you could be the best server, the best auditioner or whatever in the world, auditioning for that job, interviewing for that job. You could just knock out the interview. You have all the right tools, all the right ingredients, but this other person, it was just funnier. This other person, they're not as tall as our leading lady. We already have a black guy in the show. Like there's always something there that has nothing to do with what you did. I mean, I've been a reader at auditions, and you'll see every actor should do it, but every person should do it, because you'll see people who are like, wow, that person was one of the best auditions I've ever seen in my life. They won't even get a call back. Won't even get a call back. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you a funny story about Felicia Rashad. People will know as Claire Huxtable. Fabulous actress and singer. And she was directing a production of A Raisin in the Sun at this at this great theater in Connecticut, I think it was. And I just gotten back from a long gig in California. And so, I mean, literally, I think I got off the plane, not literally, but I got off the plane auditioning. It was a part for, there's a part named Joseph Asagai, who's this Nigerian student who tries to, who's courting the daughter Benita in the play. And I was like, oh, this is perfect. I just got done playing this rigorous leading role in this musical. I can play this other part. You know, I can roll out of bed and play this part. This is great. And so I went in for the audition in like a t-shirt and jeans. The guy's wearing a suit pretty much in the scene. And I barely worked on the scene, and I didn't get to the end of it. And Felicia, you know, is at sitting at the table, just goes, "Stop. Thank you. Thank you." And I was like, all right, you're welcome. Like, I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to say. And so I left the room, and one of the casting agents, her assistant, you know, kind of runs down the hallways like, we want you to come back this afternoon. Can you come back at like 4? I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. So of course, all my friends are saying, oh, there go Clifton again. He got another job. He's about to go pack up your suitcase again, man. You be booking. And so I go back to the callback. I'd done some work on the scene. And again, she stops me before I get to the end of the scene. And she goes, stop. Perfection. 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 Didn't get the part. And I knew it. And I knew it. As soon as my friends were like, oh, you know, pack up your bag. And I was like, nah, man, it ain't gonna work out that way. So apparently somebody improved on perfection that day. But it's stuff like that, man. Like, only another actor understands what it is where, you know, I auditioned for this play at Lincoln Center. The lead is this play that was based on this sort of Jack Johnson kind of boxer character. You know, would have been a life-changing role. And I was down to the final. It was me. There's a classic actor joke. It's down to me and the guy who's going to get it. And you know, you're back in for successive auditions, and the pressure is higher and higher, and there's more people in the room. You know, who are these people? They're the producers. Okay, it's like, you know, it's a fucking high school reunion or something back there. And you're getting adjustments, and it's just a very, very bizarre feeling, a very vulnerable place to be. And you work so hard, and you know, I had a friend who was the reader. He was like, they loved you. We'll see you here in January. You know, you're at a point in your life where, you know, I didn't have any money. My girlfriend was living across the country, and I felt like a loser. And, you know, I just wanted to kill myself, all this stuff, and just a failure. But this one job came, this audition comes through, which could turn around everything. You know, it's like, this is one of those things that finally, like, this is one of the thing that's going to send you. And just didn't get it. And I think that maybe that was in the autumn of some year that happened. And I was crushed for like months after that. I just was like, I have nothing else now. And only another actor can understand what that feels like, to just to pour your heart into, you know, something over and over and over again, and know that you're the best, if not one of the best, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. In a normal career, you'd work and you'd get promoted and you'd network and everything. And so basically, what all I'm saying is that, you know, an acting career, oftentimes it's you're networking the same way, and you're auditioning, and people are learning who you are, and you're winning over casting directors who try to get you into shows. You have a great agent, and what's their relationships like with the other casting offices, and over time, you know, then you land that one job that people say, oh, I've never seen this person before. And then they look back and you've done this whole body of work. Right. So it sucks. So there's only other actors know what that's like and what that grind is like. Only other actors really can be comfortable with you not having money all the time. Only other actors understand the unique stress and really the heartache of the business. But only other actors are as crazy as you are. So it's like, it's a double-edged sword.
So I guess my, so my wife and I started watching, you can call them B movies or even C movies, like there's terrible movies. And they have pretty bad acting. And we were talking, like, I remember talking to her, and she's like, God, they were really bad. It's like, why would they take, and actually some of the movies, it's not even the actors, it's like the movie is bad. Like the production is terrible. And you're like, man, why would they take this? And I'm like, it's gotta work. Like, you don't wake up and you're Brad Pitt, you're making millions of dollars. Like, you gotta work. And so if that means you gotta take some sketchy scene with fake CGI birds or some shit, like, and punching at the air, like, then that's what you gotta do. You gotta take it.
Well, I mean, there's also levels. There's levels of this shit. Right?
Yeah.
And then you realize, again, the greats make it look really easy. One of my favorite examples of this, because really it's a ridiculous job. If you're an actor, it's a ridiculous job. I mean, the great Sir Laurence Olivier was one of the most celebrated actors of the 20th century. And, I think he was in his 50s, and he was quoted as saying, like, this is such a ridiculous job for any adult, for any adult male. But, one of my favorite movies is Tom Cruise's, I guess it's Live, Die, Repeat, but I think Edge of Tomorrow is a better title. And there's a great scene, like, for those who haven't seen it, the premise of the film is that there's this soldier who basically, it's like Groundhog Day, but with mechs, and it's so cool. But he dies over and over again until he learns how to, like, win the war or whatever, basically. But there's that first scene where the Tom Cruise character makes that realization that, wait, I should be dead right now. Oh, God. And he becomes us as the viewer, realizing, holy shit. And the camera, it's a tight shot on his face. You see him looking around, and it's panning around with him, and he's taking in this base that he's on, and the horror and the panic of not knowing where the hell he is, what's going to do. It's all there. But when you look at it, in reality, it's this tiny man with all of this, like, with millions of dollars of equipment focused right on him, on this tiny person. And all you would see is somebody just going like it's stupid. It's so stupid. But when it's on camera and you see Cruise's eyes, even the way that he doesn't quite put his full face in the camera, like, you can see he's a pro. He knows how to work. He knows how to work the camera. And so, he knows what his best angles are and what not to do. Like, that comes from years and years of practice. And you don't see it because you're in the audience watching. But as a technician, you're like, he's so good. And it's just the little stuff like that. But it looks easy. So then you have a bunch of bums who say, well, I can be an actor. I was an extra on Homicide one season. And, the other people said I was pretty good. So I'm an actor. And it's like, no, have you put in the hours? Have you studied these great plays? Have you delivered yourself? Have you developed your instrument to do? I did a guest star on this Fox show that is no more. And the actors on the show were all New York people. So we were all talking, the lead actors were. And there was one dude, he's kept it real, man. He goes, it's too many motherfuckers working. Because we were like, dude, because there's so many shows. And now, like, this was years before, and I thought for years before it happened that there was a streaming bubble and that it would inevitably pop. And now it has. But that was part of the thing, that there's just too many shows. So if you have all these shows, well, you need more actors. And there's always some motherfucker around who's like, I'm an actor. They want to make some money and look pretty on TV. So there's that for them. But they don't have the same level of of investment that you might have had. But there's a lot of that because there's a glut of all these shows. And then again, people watching at home say, well, this looks pretty easy. I can do that. That person is awful. I'm going to get that job. But, at the same time, like, it's work. And there's a phrase, there's a show called Nice Work If You Can Get It. That's pretty much all of show business. It's nice work if you can get it. And if you're one of the lucky few who, as I said before, can get in that small circle of working professionals, then it's a really, really, really nice place to be.
Yeah.
A really nice place to be. Only problem there is that, you kind of have to have all the right opinions if you want to really stay there. And that can be problematic, so to speak.
Well, in much of what you were saying, like it's this idea that I think with social media and mass media and just in general has made people believe that extremely difficult things are really easy to do. Like I can't tell you how many people are like, yeah, I'm just going to start up a YouTube channel and do. And I'm just like, man, YouTube is the most saturated market. It's so hard to grow any sort of following. You know, it's hard to grow a following on YouTube. There's just a lot. There's a ton of content.
I don't know. That's the thing. This is all an accident. It's just go on other people's shows, and then people come and find me. So
Yeah.
I don't know how to, if it was my job, because now I am looking into this stuff,
Mhm.
and I'm just like, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's
It's
a
a lot.
grind. Yeah.
But there are a lot of people who just think they turn on the camera and it'll just have a viral video and they'll have 1 million followers. Like, it's, I don't know. I don't know if it's like, there's so much information out there that everyone thinks they have the instructions to success.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword, I think. It's weird because on one hand, I mean, I do love that platforms like YouTube have allowed, like I think everyone is interesting when they are in their own niche,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's one of the big lessons I think that YouTube has, I won't say taught, but, and I think that's one of the reasons why no one cares about movie stars anymore. One of many reasons. Anyone can be famous theoretically. They have access to that, but also, these sort of carefully manicured and frankly vapid stars, so to speak,
Mhm.
or celebrities, are just not as interesting as the guy sitting in his bathrobe in his room, breaking down, giving you some of the most astute political analysis you've ever seen. People who are watching might know what I'm talking about. But, he sits in the bathrobe in Vermont. He's got 666s in his name, but I'm like, this dude is. Why would I want to listen to whatever the hell Wolf Blitzer or some asshole pundit is saying when this guy in his bathrobe, who also does videos about the occult and like military rations,
Mhm.
is talking about this poll says this, but in the aggregate actually it says that, and and it's 2 points better than this, and if he just takes this state and this state, then the whole election, like he's giving this sort of point by point and it's like, dude, you're a weirdo, but you're a weirdo that's living that's existing, for this period of time in this video. And like you're living in your niche or whatever that thing is, your own genius.
Yeah.
And that's cool. But at the same time, I think now it's like the bar of entry to be quote unquote famous or whatever is so low that, like I see people doing these like their TikTok sketches or whatever. And some of them are genuinely funny and kind of fresh. And like there was one the other day that made fun of this Tyler Perry movie. I guess this recent Tyler Perry movie. And you can tell it's just these regular people in a supermarket filming this thing. And I shit you not, man, I laughed so hard because it was the kind of comedy I don't think you'd really see out of Hollywood anymore. This guy comes up, it's a black couple. This guy comes out, from nowhere in this grocery store. It's like maybe a Stop and Shop or something. There's this white woman in the background, like, oh, what's going on? Are they filming something? But he's just like this really ham-handed dialogue about, where you been, bitch? Da, 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 da. And the woman in the sketch is so funny. She's like, oh God, oh Jesus, and all the tropes that you see in a Tyler Perry film are in this sketch, and the punchline is her like backing away, and I guess it's a reference to this particular film. It's a spoof, but it was hilarious. But I'm like, do they know why that's funny? Do they know why why that works. You know, people see that and they say, well, I can do that too. And on one hand, it's great because, you know, I think these institutions, you know, Hollywood, Broadway, you know, are kind of crumbling. And I think there's a lot of great creativity in sort of the quote unquote masses, you know, doing their own individual things. Like they'll post some crazy stuff on TikTok. Like that's hilarious and fresh and fun. But now I think it's like, well, I'm an actor too. Anyone can just be an actor now. And
Just like you're a model on Instagram.
a model, you're a model. I'm going to put some leggings on and film myself doing squats. I'm a model.
Here's my butt cheeks.
Here's
a model.
That's the thing. Why I'm so black pilled, because of, like, you know, everything is so fake and synthetic. That's the other thing as well.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you know, I worked at this nightclub in Buckhead for about 6 months after I got here. And it was so funny because the sort of raw dynamics of the sexual marketplace were just on display there.
Yeah.
And, you know, our cocktail waitresses, they were just these hot young 20-somethings that all the other security guys were going crazy over. But they had these older men come in with money. They had these men wrapped around their fingers, and I was like, I can't even be mad. Like they're playing the game right now. They're enjoying themselves. But I see these women come in. You know, this was before I even knew what a BBL was. I didn't even know, like, what is a BBL? What does that even mean?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and these women coming in, just looking like cartoon characters.
Yeah.
You know, just these ridiculous proportions. And then you see videos where, like, well, you know, they can't wipe their butts properly now because they can't reach back. They literally can't reach back. I'm like, you know, you didn't think about that beforehand before you got this big ass on you now. But you got 1 million Instagram followers, so, you know, who cares? But, you know, I would call them like Kardashian pretty or porn star pretty.
Yeah.
You know, it's not, you can tell they've had work done on their faces and their lips. And they've got these eyelashes that look like fucking Edward Scissorhands. And, you know, they just look ridiculous. And then you go on, you know, IG or whatever, and people are just, you know, they're simping all over these women. And, you know, I'm like, it's fake, dude. They got filters and they got all kinds of silicone. I mean, what is that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand the guys who can't tell that. Like, none of this is real. Like, I see the people do like these YouTube shorts and videos where they're like, the day after, and she has no makeup on. I'm like, who are you? I was like, all right, I get it's funny. But there are really guys who experience that. And I'm like, oh, you're an idiot. Like, you can tell that there is caked on makeup. Her face has no lines.
Yeah, no lines.
No lines.
Like, she looks like an action figure. Like a robot. She looks like CGI.
Her
You
face
can't
is
tell.
smooth. Like, no one's face looks like that.
And it's just like, you know, and like that hip to waist ratio, like there's no way. There's obviously no way. I worked with this one guy at this restaurant, and he was talking about, I think one of his family members, maybe it was an aunt, it might have been his own, somebody who had gotten what we used to refer to as a sex change. But one of the things that he said about this person who was now, you know, identifying as a woman, he was just like, I mean, everyone can say, like, her titty's hard. Like, I'm like, that's exactly, like, that's why, like, I can't, like, even breast implant, like, you can't tell, like, look at the way her breasts are sitting on, like, they don't move anywhere. They're just like,
They're like this.
they don't make sense. Like, they don't move anywhere. They don't hang. They just kind of sit there. Like, that's not real, bro. This is not real. That BBL, like, nobody's ass is shaped like that in real life. Like, it's not from squats. I guarantee you it's not from squats.
Right.
It's fake. It's all fake. The lips are fake. You know, everything is fake. And, you know, it's just, everything's digitized. And, you know, I don't know. I think David Mamet, you did this master class. He said, you know, we're all allowing machines to do our dreaming for us now, which I think is, kind of sucks, but I think it's true.
Yeah. Well, we're nearing the end. I always ask a final question, and that final question is, Are you optimistic about the future?
No, I'm just not.
Just not.
I mean, maybe in the distant future, after things get worse before they get better, but there's just a variety of. I think there are a variety of trends in place that I don't know how we pull out of those things. Maybe for some groups, it's going to be okay. But I was watching this one streamer, white woman, very right wing, and I've watched her progression into becoming more and more racist over time. Like she doesn't even apologize about it anymore. And she's highly intelligent, very smart. And she was tearing up in some live stream that she did, which was already unusual because she's pretty tough, from what I've seen. And her co-host was like, what's wrong? And she said, it's just dawning on me that this is the first time that she goes, it just dawns on me that the life of my child, she just had a baby, is going to be much harder than my own life was. And I think there are it's interesting because I I break it down to feeling like, there's not enough love songs anymore. Cynicism and nihilism are kind of the two overarching humors, if we use the old language of our time. And I see it reflected in the music, for instance, where music in the 70s, love songs, even breakup songs, it was like these are two adults who've been through something profound. And, love and togetherness and peace, and the musicianship was so much more advanced. They didn't have computers doing everything for them. But now so much of the music is, I got my money, I don't need you. It's how fuckable am I? It's very materialistic. And then you read about young people, they're not in relationships, they're not really having sex, they're more atomized. Suicide rates are going up, anxiety, depression is increasing. I do think this is for a whole different podcast, but I think that we're going to see a backlash. I think people are really, really tired of catering to Black Americans. I think that's something to really keep an eye on, as if and when the right begins to rise to power. I think that there is going to be a lot of really unhappy and lonely women in the next decade or so. I think you're saying, I began to see it a few years ago when these young mothers who felt very guilty, but because they went to spend time with their children and not, be these super high achievers. And I see video after video now, and blog after blog, and op-eds and tweets and everything of people just saying, there's no good men out there. There's no chaste women out there. Look at where the economy is headed. They can't stop spending money, and this is going to crash. And then there's all these technological barriers put into place. Look what they did during the pandemic years, and how they were able to divide society, and now they're importing all these people, and who's going to pay for all of this? And but it's, you don't want to be the doom and gloom person. And I'm somebody who's saying, hey, like, that's one of the reasons art is important. If people can channel whatever turmoil they have going on inside them, or a painting or a song or a novel or a movie or something can touch something inside of you didn't even know you had. It can draw out something emotional that you hadn't, in some cathartic reaction, something you didn't even know was in you. Like that's another form of healing in a way, or teaching. But even the artist, it's not good. I mean, it's, you look at Hollywood, it's a bunch of, like, if you go back and watch old episodes of Siskel and Ebert, and you go back and look at films from the 80s and the 90s, like there were so many bangers that were coming out. And now people just feel like we're inundated with, it's either super political nonsense, or it's a reboot, or it's a sequel, or it's a remake, or it's a re something or other.
Right.
It's like, it is I don't know how you steer yourself out of that decline. I think that's what we're witnessing right now. I hate to be one of those people who's like, oh, society is declining, it's all going to collapse. But I look at, like, where is the creativity? Where is that? There seem to be so many aspects of it crumbling, and some people say, well, we need to bring God back, and some people say, well, we just have to make sure everyone's equal, and some people say, materially equal, maybe. We have to pass these new laws, or we have to tweak this religion or something. But I think we're talking around what the deeper problems are, and I think conservatives have a point when they say that it's more spiritual in nature.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think you can legislate your way out of our problems.
No.
There's no funding or government program or teaching curriculum that can address what really needs to be addressed. And in my capacity as an artist, so that's one of the things I've been trying to scream at people about. Is like, you keep ignoring art and artists, and not to send some kind of a message, but just to, someone described it brilliantly. Even a painting can transport you a beautiful painting can transport you for a split second out of the mundanity of your existence and into some kind of higher plane, and you can lift yourself up out of whatever, just our existential problem of, like, we're going to die someday, and you can forget that for a split second with your favorite song or your favorite movie or a great novel, and enrich yourself in that way. And we just need more love songs.
Well, I'll add in, I'm an optimistic, I was just talking to someone, an optimistic realist. So I see the same things that you see, but I try to take that in measure. Like, it's very easy to see the bad thing and then the bad thing and the bad thing. And it's just like, it leads you to come to the conclusion that there's nothing in between. But like you talked about COVID and the lockdowns and everything. And there are a ton of things we could talk about for hours that were terrible during that period. In 2020, it's this weird, terrible year. But at the same time, for me, it was a good year because I started writing my book, and I was flourishing in my relationship with my wife, and I proposed to her in 2020. So it's like, and then that turned into me having a voice in the world. And if it wasn't for 2020, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you and talking to other people about it, even the people who were screaming about, all the COVID restrictions, like Dr. Jay Bhattacharya. And so I think about like all these things that there tends to be some sort of light along with the darkness that exists. And I don't ever want to lose that sight. And so it's not to say there is no darkness, clearly is, but there's something there. There's always something there. I call like people like myself, people who were born out of 2020, the 2020 rebirth. My friend Tiffany Justice with Moms for Liberty, born out of 2020.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing. It's just the kind of shit that woman gets.
Yes.
It's from unhinged people.
And she's such a normal person.
Totally normal.
I've had dinner with her. I've hung out with her. I've been to her home a couple times. She is such a mom, like a nice, normal mom. She's not even like, even behind the scenes, she's not like, yeah, I really feel this way, or Trump. Like she's not like that. She's such, if she wasn't doing this, you'd be like, oh, that's such and such mom. And she's a nice neighbor.
Yeah.
Like
but she's a Nazi.
She's a Nazi. But I just see, I do see, and I'm very concerned about the same things you're talking about, the reaction to the racist left having the right saying, well, they call us racist anyways, and just going in that direction. And I do see fringe factions becoming more and more fringe. And I think the most important thing is not to try to rescue the fringe, because the fringe is going to be the fringe. And you can't talk someone out of becoming crazy. But what you can do is prevent people from joining them. And so that's why I think being politically homeless is actually a valuable asset, because a lot of people are in the same situation, like you and I, who don't fit entirely in both sides, yet they're being convinced to choose. And what I'm saying is, you don't have to fucking choose anything but yourself. It's okay if you're 75% this side and 25% this side or whatever. It's okay that you have these feelings, because human beings are complicated. We're nuanced. We have different life experiences. We're from different places. We have different upbringings. Two people who grew up with the same parents have different viewpoints. Like, of course, there is more than two ways of looking at the world. And I think that we shouldn't be pressured into choosing. You shouldn't. Like, if you want to choose, if you want to be a Democrat, Republican, if you want to conservative, liberal, if you want to take, that's two ways of going about it. But there's a whole bunch of other ways to go about this as well. And it's okay if you have a nuanced view. It's okay if you're pragmatic about your vote. It's okay if you don't vote. Like, I'm okay with that. It is your right as a citizen to vote and not to vote. And you may not like it, so be it, whatever. But we have a choice. We have a choice. We have free will in this world. And I guess what I'm just, without ranting too long, my thing is, there's something there. There's always something there that gives me some sort of hope. Even though I'm seeing a lot of bullshit that's happening, I do see those TikTokers who are questioning their parents and how they did certain things, who are questioning things that are like, why did we do that? Who are trying to question certain orthodoxy that was placed on them that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, who are trying to decide for themselves how to live in this world, who are hampered by helicopter parents, right? Who are trying to overcome obstacles that were placed in front of them because they had shitty upbringings. So I do see that there's an effort to move forward by many. And I just don't want us to get stuck in the very easy, this is terrible, this is terrible, this is terrible. There's always been bad things happening. There's always been bad things happening throughout human history. But there's been a lot of great things. Every period has had new inventions, new wonders, new art, new culture, things like that. There's always been those things amongst the terrible things that have been going on as well. So I don't know, there's always going to be light with the darkness. So that's why I'm optimistic, and without getting into the religious aspect. But I do think that there's something to be optimistic for, that things will get better. certain problems will go away, new problems will come in. Right now we're mutilating children. And 5 years from now, we just saw the UK banned, all this gender stuff on kids. That's progress, right? Because a couple of years ago, they were fighting this. So maybe the United States is going in that direction. That's one problem that everybody thought was going to be here forever. So, that's kind of how I try to see it. I was like, yes, this is a problem, but are we being propagandized? Yes, absolutely. Are we being inundated with a problem like, for example, I was telling someone, if you had Crazy Sherry who lived down the street, that was a problem for the people who lived around Crazy Sherry. Why the fuck do I care about Crazy Sherry who lives thousands of miles away from me and I have no interaction with? But yet someone records Crazy Sherry saying something crazy, and now I have to have an emotional reaction to it. That's the type of world we're living in, where everything is being condensed and being forced for us to react to, even though that's not my problem. Crazy Sherry's not my problem. That's your problem.
Unless she's running for vice president or president.
Then it's a little bit different.
Then you might have some issues there.
Well, that's a great note to end that. Clifton, thank you so much for stopping by. It's so great to meet you in person for the first time. I feel like it's been years in making. I have been a fan. I'm still a fan of yours. So it's an honor to sit down with you and talk to you and pick your brain a little bit.
I appreciate that, Adam. It's been a pleasure meeting you as well. I'm sorry that I'm not in a more rosy mood. But all I can say is that I'm a Scorpio, so that's my excuse.
That's your excuse. Listen, I like you for you, and if that's how you're feeling, that's how you're feeling. It's all good. But once again, thank you so much. It was an honor.
Likewise, sir. Appreciate it.